Anyway, I'm back. That is a really good album. That's the Mahavishnu Orchestra. I was listening to that before. Narada Michael Walden. You know, Narada Michael Walden, after he played with the Mahavishnu Orchestra, made a lot of other records. I'll talk about that another time, but he went on to be a really big record producer later. In fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he produced a lot of Whitney Houston's records. I don't know if he played drums on those records, but I know that he produced them. Those records are the kind of drumming that was on Whitney's record was not an indication of what Narada Michael Walden could do. But I want to go on to my next tribute, and I'm going to kill this. Who am I going to talk about next? I talked about Buddy, I talked about Louie, I talked about Gene Krupa. Now I'm going to have a special tribute. Oh, check that out, that's Billy Cobham. Now I'm going to talk, my next guy that I'm going to talk about, who do I want to talk about now? How about Danny Seraphine? Yeah, and the thing that's cool about that is, thank goodness Danny Seraphine is still very much alive and playing and doing some really amazing things. Danny Seraphine is the first and really the original drummer from Chicago. And, the thing about Danny Seraphine, by the way, I met him. I'll tell you about that story a little later. No, actually, I already did. I told you guys about when I met him. So I won't retell that story. But I'll tell you one thing, on my, somewhere on Facebook or somewhere, there's a picture of him and me. He actually has his arm around me, and that was pretty cool, that, picture of him, because he was really like one of my mentors indirectly, even though I never really studied with him, but I did study his work. But here's what I want to talk about Danny Seraphine's style. Aside from the fact that when I was first learning to play the drums, and I heard Chicago for the first time, I knew that was the kind of music that I was going to want to play. That I didn't really want to be a jazz drummer. I knew that I didn't want to be just a straight rock drummer. I knew that I was going to be like a jazz rock drummer, and that's what Chicago really was at that time. There's also Blood, Sweat, and Tears that came out at about that time too, and that was a really amazing band. And there was also another band, Lighthouse. These were all bands that had horn sections, and it was the horns that gave it kind of that jazzy feel. Blood, Sweat, and Tears is a little jazzier than Chicago. Chicago was a little more pop-oriented. But let me talk about some of the things that made Danny Seraphine so amazing on those recordings. When the first record came out, the Chicago Transit Authority, I think that's what it was called, there was a lot of, like the introduction, there were odd meters in it. I mean, it started off at 4, it went into 6. There was also 2 different meters in, does anybody know what time it is, where it went into like a 5? I'm not going to sing those parts. So the thing is Danny was like one of the first rock drummers to kind of incorporate sort of odd time. And this was very early in time. I mean, this was like in 1969, 1970. So that was really cool. But he kind of, and he had introduced, the rhythms that made those songs really, really cool. And then also too, he was really, really a fantastic soloist, creating a lot of really classic solos. One of the particular solos that I remember, and I'm going to just go through the discography, so to speak, I don't know if that's the right word, the different solos that he did, but on the very first album, I'm a Man, he did a solo in there. He did a little sort of a break solo in the introduction. It was like a breakdown where he used a lot of different things. Well, on the second album, which was the big album, the commercially, well, they really made a lot of albums that were really commercial. But on the second album, the Make Me Smile suite, that also too had a lot of really, really great odd times. Danny Serapin had kind of a style where he liked to play on the bell of the cymbal a lot, and it really came through. And I remember when I saw Chicago, I only saw them live one time. I wish I'd seen them more. Doug Klein, who I went to high school with, had tickets to Chicago and invited me. He had like an extra ticket. His brother didn't want to go. I was glad his brother didn't want to go. Fantastic. So I said, yeah, I'll go, man, definitely. So I got to see Chicago at Nassau Coliseum. But I remember when they were performing, Danny had, it was hard to see, but I could see he had the microphones right over his cymbals. So when he played those cymbals, and he liked to play on the bell a lot, you really could hear it in the mix. It was a really good live sound. This was before like digital microphones and all that fancy stuff. So I noticed that. That was like a really, really cool thing. His style was very song-oriented, and that's kind of what I liked about his playing. That Chicago was, they were making arrangements that were like jazz rock, but Danny kind of kept it in the pocket. But he did a lot of fills, probably a lot more fills than what most drummers would do commercially. But they were really in the pocket. They really fit the part. Did a lot of really, really good tom-tom work. Had really, really good press rolls, which I don't have. And he used to use little doubles around a lot. You would kind of move the doubles around, from tom-tom to tom-tom. That gave me a lot of ideas about different things that I wanted to do. And I think you're right that his solos were really nicely put together, but the parts of the songs were really cool. He would do like breakups, like they would break down solos within the song. For example, on Free, I just want to be free. There's a part where it's like did all kinds of different things there. But I think the thing that I adore mostly about Danny Serapin is that music was my training ground in how I was going to learn to play. How I was going to learn to play. I learned how to play the drums through playing through the first, Chicago 1, 2, 3. Those first 3 albums were released when I was really, when I was sort of in my early, I don't want to tell you guys how old I am, but I was early in my career in playing. And by playing to those arrangements, I really learned how to play. He's like, and I remember when he came to give the clinic at Sam Ash, how when he went up, I kind of patted him on the back. I said, "You're my idol, man," And I learned how to play from him. And those arrangements made me a really, really pretty good drummer. And probably one of the reasons why I'm a little busier and a little bit more colorful than most drummers that are more like just simple type drummers. I tend to sometimes get a little busy, but that's like the way that I play, and that's probably from the training that I had of listening to all those Chicago tunes. I'll finish with this. I don't know the whole story of why Danny Serapin is no longer in the band. I really don't remember. I don't want to say anything, because I don't really know. When Danny gave that clinic, he talked a little bit about some things that I don't really want to mention here. I just want to celebrate Danny Serapin's greatness. But I'll tell you one thing. After Danny Serapin left the band, and I listened to concert footage of the other drummer. Now the other drummer, I forgot what his name was. He had some kind of a cool name. Tris something? I don't really remember his name. He was really, really excellent. No put down to him. He was amazing. But the sound of the band, it wasn't the same. It just didn't sound the same because, he defined those songs. When a member of the band leaves the band, it's difficult to write because the sound that that band had gets defined by those players. Unfortunately, Terry Kath passed away. They had to get another guitar player, to replace him. But, and I'm sure the guitar player they got played Terry's parts pretty well, like Terry, to celebrate that. But the drummer that they had, and they've had a few drummers since, I really was not impressed as I would be with the original sound. It had nothing to do with ability, it just had to do with the sound. It's almost like when Billy Joel, parted with his band and got different guys. Even though, like the guy that Billy Joel has is amazing, but it's not Liberty, and he doesn't sound like Liberty, and he isn't Liberty, and Liberty created those sounds, created those grooves. So, I would love to see Chicago have Danny Seraphine come back. So Danny, if you're listening, call them and try to get back with them. But the whole band, the whole Chicago band is not the original band at all anymore. You have the horn players, and those guys are great, but they're all other, just like, I guess they're backup musicians basically. I'm sure they're all real good, but it doesn't sound like the Chicago that created those records. And that's why I probably wouldn't pay too much attention to them anymore, because they may be playing the arrangements, but they don't sound, when a band creates something, and there's a certain roster in the band, and then they change that, it sounds different, and that's what happened. And, I'm sorry if that happened. And that's what made Danny so great, because his drumming was that band. In other words, he invented the sound of that band. And so you got Chicago, but you ought to get Danny back. Either that or call me. I'll play. See you guys later.